Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresham from the IAM2755 podcast, and I have an awesome guest on the show today. I have Dana Bahr. Dana, excited to have you on the show.
I'm so excited to be here on this rainy Friday.
Yes, super excited to have you on and talk about all the awesome things that you're doing, rain or not. I know we're going to provide some awesome value and have a phenomenal conversation. And of course, before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Dana so you hear about some of the awesome things she's been working on. And Dana is a Pinterest marketing strategist and the creator of the Styled Pin Collection, a monthly resource that helps creative entrepreneurs grow their visibility using strategic, on brand Pinterest content without the constant pressure to show up daily on social media. With a background in both the wedding industry, marketing, and content strategy, Dana specializes in helping service-based business owners turn their offers into evergreen traffic and lead generation machines using Pinterest as a visual search engine. Her approach focuses on sustainability, simplicity, and showing up in ways that feel aligned and not exhausting. Through templates, training, and her podcast, The Unapologetic Pinner, Dana empowers entrepreneurs to create a marketing presence that works while they rest. And I had the pleasure of sharing the mic and being on Dana's show, and that was phenomenal. We had an awesome conversation. I love everything she's doing. I love her philosophy around marketing as well too. So I think so many times when we think marketing needs to be 24/7, that means we need to be 24/7. But I think we're going to dive down deeper into like how she approaches that. But love her background, former wedding and event planner, shifted into marketing about 6+ years or so ago. But one of the things I was listening to, which kind of, really gave me a different perspective on one of her other interviews, was that so many times we don't see Pinterest as the search engine that it is. And I think that shift that maybe Pinterest has made, but also people are starting to make, and she definitely, does with her veil method, which we'll touch on, is such a huge thing. So Dana, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Absolutely. I think it's funny. As you were reading, I was like nodding my head, like, yeah, that's me.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that is me.
Yes.
I do that. That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. With the day to day and how things change is always like, okay, like where are we at? And then sometimes we need to hear that North Star as much as everybody else does as well too.
I think honestly, just you saying 5 or 6 years, I almost was like, no, it's only been two. But then I'm looking at my calendar. It is 2026 and it has been almost 6 years. Where's the
I
time
know.
gone?
Yeah. Good things happen when you're having fun, right? So that's what we would kind of make sure that we do. So I guess to kick everything off, we talked around the 6+ years. Let's rewind the clock. Hear a little bit more on how you got started. What I call your CEO story.
Well, I guess I need to, one, reflect on it myself a little bit more, given that it's been 6 years and what a journey it must have been, because that doesn't feel like it. So, looking back, I started my business after realizing that most entrepreneurs are being taught, and that was myself included, to market in ways that just weren't sustainable. Because when I started my business, I was a single mom of three and I worked a full-time job while trying to grow my own service-based business. So we're already well versed in juggling client work, family time, limited capacity. And I personally experienced the pressure of constant posting and that short term visibility and the exhaustion that came from that. Like, I'm literally, every time I'm in the car line waiting for my kids, I'm posting something or responding to comments, or I'm doing something to just stay relevant, not even really to get a client, just to be relevant and found online by someone, anyone, no one really in particular. And I knew there had to be a better way. And that's when I started midnight scrolling of trying to find some other way to grow keep my business, my brand in front of people, or funneling people in without me having to, squeeze 2 minutes in the car line, staying up till midnight trying to batch schedule something, and then, hoping and praying that I get that magical unicorn client. And so through that search is when I discovered how Pinterest functions as a search engine, not a social media
Mhm.
platform. And it completely changed, not overnight, but it has completely changed how I think about growth and how I help my clients think about growth. So, over the last 6 years, I have built my business around helping other entrepreneurs create visibility that compounds over time instead of constantly starting over each day, because literally yesterday's post probably doesn't mean anything with how the algorithm works. And so, what began as a service quickly evolved into a much broader education and strategy practice focused on long term CEO level visibility decisions.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And I love, you sharing that journey as well too. And I feel like so many great things come from that frustration. And then after that frustration, asking the question, like, there has to be a better way to do this. And I think that's where the real entrepreneur, or I shouldn't say real, but the true entrepreneur kind of comes in and says, not only is there probably a better way, I'm going to figure out what that is. And I love how, you went through that process of like figuring out that, because I feel like there is this, I'm gonna call it a bar, or maybe it's an expectation, or people believe like the only way to get ahead in their business, the only way to get found, to have that visibility, is I have to be, 25/7 and like working on social media and in my business. But in reality, understanding that there's a better way, and there's a more, sounds like, impactful and maybe strategic way that can happen, is a very huge thing.
Yes, I think strategy, we hear that word a lot, but I don't think we take enough time to pause long enough to figure out what that means. We're just like, "Oh, it's a social media strategy." Well, social media strategy means you're posting 3 to 5 times a day, every day,
Right.
and that's just a mix of, like, carousel, reels, static image, how many stories you're doing, like, that's the strategy, and that strategy is burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I say so often, like, I feel like we forget about the human part of business, the human part of life. I love as well too, as you talked around those things. Like, I think so many times when we're in our business, we're like, we're not the dad, we're not the mom, we're not grandpa, we're not, whatever titles we might have, we're only in this business. But I think if we kind of divorce ourselves or move ourselves from that, and don't have the realization that this is a whole human, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. Because when the babies call, or the kids call, or whatever it happens, we have to be that mom, dad, whatever title we might have. And I think if we don't realize that, then we're not going to be able to get further ahead and thinking differently in our business.
Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more and hear a little bit more on how you're working with and serve your clients. Could you take us through a little bit more on what that looks like and how you're having them to leverage this platform?
So I run a Pinterest-led visibility strategy business for service-based entrepreneurs and creative business owners. Ideally, I love working with wedding professionals because that is the background that I came out
Mhm.
of. My work helps clients turn their expertise, their content, and offers into evergreen traffic and lead generation systems using Pinterest as the visual search engine that it is to fill the funnel. Pinterest is a great top of funnel builder where you can pull them from this platform, hook their attention, and then have more control on your website, have more control in your email list, to what they see, what they learn, what are their next steps. You have a much more intimate way of guiding them to work with you and create those 7 to 12 touch points that are required before someone buys from you, especially with other generations. They're ingesting so much content before they even want to talk to you or book you or buy from you. They're bouncing around from all of your platforms to learn more about you. So, knowing that, I offer strategic audits, education, and implementation support, which includes my Veil audit framework and the Style Pin collection, and which gives business owners the tools to execute consistently without burning out. I also host the Unapologetic Pinner podcast, where I teach sustainable search based marketing through a CEO lens.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And, of course, I'm obviously very biased about podcasting and being such a great platform, but I love like understanding things and approaching things in a different way. I think, again, you can have that perspective or that strategy around like, hey, I'm just going to keep posting until I find somebody. But I think to be very strategic around and understand, like you said, what you said so well, is it's a top of funnel opportunity, where I think so
Mhm.
many times we think that as business owners, like if somebody hears what we do, they become a customer. But in reality, we have to have that funnel and guide people through that process, because people have a different process. They go through that in different ways. So I feel like understanding like that there's an opportunity there allows us to be more present, but also maybe more intentful with the people that are coming through that funnel.
Absolutely. Well, and then when I first started my business, you see a lot of people, oh, you need to build a funnel. That's the most that you see
Yeah.
is you have to have a funnel to get them through. But no one talks about how to fill the
Yeah.
funnel, which is extremely unhelpful.
Right.
I love having a funnel and having a process and a workflow. But if no one goes through it, it really doesn't matter if you build it or not. It's like I think it was a baseball stadium. It was a movie. If you
They
build
will
it, they
come.
will
Yeah.
come. You can build 100 funnels, but if no one knows what you're doing, no one's gonna go into your funnel. No one's gonna know who you are. You have to be able to open your mouth and you have to be able to talk and connect with people. But we as entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs that have, life outside of our business, we don't have the capacity or the energy to talk to 100 people a
Yeah.
day. But Pinterest allows us to do that without us physically having to speak it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like and I don't know if you've had these conversations or you've seen this as you evolved even in the business and seeing the platform evolve as well too. Like there's a misconception around what Pinterest is. I feel like there's such of like, hey, it's just like a cork board. I'm gonna add what I want there, and then I'll come back to it later, so I know it's there. Do you feel like a lot of people still look at Pinterest from that perspective?
Yes, because I think too many people that, especially from my experience, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I never thought of Pinterest like that." I
Mm,
still use it just to look for
yeah.
recipes. But when I speak to them and when I rebranded my business 2 years ago, I did the whole thing on Pinterest.
Mm,
When I started testing it out from some webinar that I, in the middle of the night, found, and I just started, like, piecing it together, I made my first sale within 2 weeks of pinning stuff. I didn't really know what I was doing.
right, right.
So, there's proof in the pudding, so to speak, of it's more than just recipes, and it's a great traffic builder, it's a great funnel filler, but it is also a wonderful tactic to have in your content ecosystem
Ooh,
to boost your revenue because I made money off of it, and if I can do it, not knowing what I was doing in the middle of the night, I was just like, "Hey, let's run with this." So can you.
yeah, absolutely. You found that it's been the service-based businesses, I think you mentioned, that end up being the people that you serve and work with and speak to because, again, if we look at it from a visual search engine, then it starts to realize that it not only can it affect and probably influence, like, your Googles and, these platforms as well too, and I imagine AI as well too, that's literally combing the internet for everything, but also there's those service-based businesses that are actually there online too, right?
Absolutely. So it works for both product and service
Okay.
based. I just specialize in service based, but I know you have the capacity of like if you have some sort of storefront or an Etsy, you can create a catalog of all of your products and put each individual link and product inside of it. So it works for both as a discoverability platform because again, you can only talk to so many people, you can
Yeah.
only attend so many, small business vendor events and things like that where you're selling your product to local. But if you have the capacity to mail something, you should definitely be utilizing Pinterest for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this might be part of what I like to call your secret sauce for yourself, the business, or a combination of both. But I mentioned it and I heard you mention it as well too, that veil method. Do you feel like that's part of your secret sauce and what sets you apart and makes you unique?
Absolutely. So through the veil method, my secret sauce is that I don't teach Pinterest as a tactic or just another platform that you have to be on. I do not teach people and I do not recommend being omnipresent. I teach people to use Pinterest as a part of their visibility
Mm,
ecosystem. Most marketing focuses on just your output, posting more, being everywhere, chasing trends. I focus on inputs and that's clarity, alignment, buyer behavior, and long term strategy. And Pinterest just simply makes those things more measurable. And so the VEIL method stands for visibility is your stuff, products, services, content. Is it even being discovered? Because again, people can't buy from you if they can't find you.
right. You're right.
Evergreen is your content almost like a timeless solution? Really think about your clients and the pain points they have. Almost, they may approach it differently depending on the generation with which they come from, but the pain points are still the same and they're still frustrating.
Yeah.
Today, tomorrow, next year, those pain points are still going to be relevant. And so your content needs to be evergreen and answering those pain points and guiding them through that frustration, guiding them towards the next step for a positive outcome. Um, I is intentional. I got distracted with what I was talking about.
Mhm.
Intentionality. Are you just creating content for the sake of creating content? Are you being very intentional and strategic about the type of content that you're creating? So instead of focusing on this one perfect tiny reel that's going to disappear in 24 hours, focus more on creating a larger pillar piece, whether that's a webinar, whether that's a masterclass, a blog post, a podcast episode, something larger, and then intentionally break it down
Mhm.
into several bite-sized pieces and repurpose it so you're not just relying on a borrowed platform like social media that can get shut down for a day, and the ripple effect of that is could be millions of views, millions of sales. It's astronomical, and put it in places that are designed for people to leave that platform and go to your website that you own. And then leads, which is why we're all in
Mhm.
business.
Yes.
We want the leads, we need the leads. Is your visibility turning into bookings and sales? And if it's not, we need to figure out why. And that's where the other parts of the veil method come into play. So, what makes my work different is that I help CEOs audit why their marketing works or doesn't work before adding more effort. Like, we take out the pieces that are not serving you, not doing anything. And that shift alone changes how people scale their brand and reach their goals.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, before we even started, I said I love that acronym just because it connects, like you said, to your background and your experience and who you worked with, but also so relevant to all business owners because again, we're almost warring with that expectation of you need to post every hour upon the hour. And if you're not doing that, then you're failing. And then a lot of times when we're saying, hey, this isn't working the way that I wanted to, we can constantly hear like, well, you're not posting enough, you're not doing it enough. And those outputs end up being some of the biggest things that we say that you have to continue to do, or we have to hire a person or whatever it might be. But I love especially how that foundation is laid in terms of like really understanding who you're targeting, because I think so many times we're trying to be and do all things and be those to everybody, when in reality, getting anchored into like who we're serving, making sure that we do have that visibility and going through those steps that you outlined so well ends up helping us get closer to where we want to be, but also maximize the time and ability that we have there too.
Absolutely. So I love a good buy back your time
Yeah.
method. And this is one of the ones that has worked best for me. And I've seen it work for my clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a huge thing. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an Apple book or a habit that you have, but what's something you lean on that makes you more effective and efficient?
I am a nerd
Yes.
about SEO and then decision making data.
Mm,
So my favorite CEO hack is treating that search data as decision making data, not just marketing data. So I look at Pinterest trends and then I align what I see trending with like Uber suggest or somewhere else so that I can understand the search behavior as a real-time market research. So before I create offers, content, or messaging, I look at what people are already searching for and saving, and then that helps me remove any guesswork or emotional decision making.
mm.
So it's not flashy. Some people find it boring, but it's powerful. And I feel like most business owners don't use search behavior enough as a leadership tool. They're like, this is amazing. And I think everyone's going to love it. And they might, but maybe next season it doesn't do as well because we don't know what your audience is actually searching for.
Yeah, and that's such a huge thing. And I feel like the technology, the data, all this information is reflective of like what's happening. So many times we can get lost in the sauce, so to speak, with technology and data and start following that, and not realizing that's representative of what people are doing, of what activities are happening, what people are penning, as you said so well, what habits are happening. That's what the data is showing. So when we kind of lose sight of that and not realize that that's going to help us and support us in terms of creating that new offer or pivoting whatever it is, then we're losing that kind of touch point or opportunity there is within the business. So I love that CEO hack just because I think so many times we lose sight of it, or maybe we're just kind of intimidated by it and we don't actually drill down and see like what's happening so that we can build a better business.
Yeah, I will say Uber Suggest is a big tool,
Hmm.
and it was intimidating for me when I first started. I was like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. There's a lot of graphs, there's a lot of numbers coming at me. But instead of letting it, control me, I was like, how I asked instead of like, can I understand this? It was more reframing the question, how can I
Mm,
understand this? And so I started self educating through like other SEO
yeah.
gurus of breaking each little part of the graph down so I knew exactly what I was looking for, and then it wasn't a daunting task, it really just became fun, and I got to start geeking out on what do people even care? It was like people watching, but without actually creepily staring at people.
There you go, there you go. And secretly, I'm sure that's one of those things that's trending as well too, getting the opportunity to people watch. But I think to be able to get that to do that at scale is such a huge thing because you're looking at this data and say, hey, what are the trends? What are the trends from last year? What happened last year? What's going on this year? You could start to see those things if we start to look at that data and drill down into that. And I think it only is going to help us, whether we have that idea or that, might be the best idea since sliced bread or not, you can support that with data, or you can maybe not support that with data and say, maybe we shouldn't do that. Whatever it is going to help you to get to where you want to be, which I think is one of the most powerful things. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So now I want to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. So this is a little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
My favorite nugget is to stop trying to be visible
Mm,
everywhere. And I know that is gonna make so many people, like, their hearts stop, but we wanna start trying to be findable or discoverable on
mm,
purpose. And that may kinda seem like the same thing, but it's genuinely not. So if I could go back, I would tell myself that growth doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing fewer things with great, massive intention.
mm,
When your visibility aligns with how people actually search, decide, and buy, marketing does not feel like that hustle anymore. It starts functioning like infrastructure. And from a marketing standpoint, attention is temporary. I hate hearing how people just want to go viral. That is like a unicorn's chance of showing up at your doorstep.
right.
It may work once, but then you have the stress and overwhelm. I gotta keep staying doing this stuff to go viral. But discoverability compounds. I'd never look at vanity metrics. I look at impressions. Speaking of Pinterest, I look at impressions, which is the visibility. Are your keywords working and pulling people in? From there, we look, are they opening the pin or are they just scrolling past it? When they open the pin, are they clicking the link and going where we want them to go? Those are the only three things that work for me and matter because that's how your discoverability compounds again and again and starts working harder for you. And you get to work not less, but less on staying relevant.
Yeah, I absolutely love, love, love that. Findable and discoverable ends up being such a huge thing because I think at the end of I always say the end of the day, the name of the game is always about being found. And if we're able to help ourselves to be found, then that's going to be a huge opportunity for us to be able to grow and build that sustainable business. But if we're not doing those things, then it's kind of like the tree falls in the forest. If no one's around, doesn't make a sound. If you're doing great things, but nobody knows about you, are you really making the impact that you could? And so when I think we start to really drill down into that and start to look at the data and analytics as we talked around to see what's working and what's not, then it starts to compound into us being more impactful and intentful with the things that are happening and that we're doing from a marketing perspective.
Absolutely. I think being a CEO means making decisions from that type of clarity that you get from data decisions as opposed to the pressure of we just need to be seen by someone.
Right.
So I don't like public speaking. I don't like it at all. So I've never worked from a space of being the well, being the loudest. I have worked from the headspace of being the busiest because I confused that with being productive.
Mm,
So once I had that shift and I really like stepped into that CEO role, it was about building systems that support growth without sacrificing capacity, values, or my overall well-being. Because if I've built this, $1 million business and I'm too exhausted to even rest, like I don't feel like I can sit on the couch and just read a book, I've done something wrong.
yeah.
So to me, a CEO thinks long term, audits before scaling, and then chooses the strategies that will still work when they step away, because that's the whole point. It's like raising your kids. You're raising your kids to no longer need you. As amazing and sad as that is, we have to build our businesses with the same mindset. It needs to run without us so that we can still have that creative, visionary passion that we had when we first started it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, like I think when you have that definition and perspective of being a CEO, you can start to realize that you can pull yourself away from the day to day or the day activities so that you can start to look at those things. You can start to look at the data, the analytics, what's going on to make those decisions. And I think so many times, and I don't know if you found this a lot of times when you talked with clients and people that are, trying to figure out their business, is if we're so busy putting out fires, doing the day to day activities, it doesn't allow us that opportunity to look and say, what's really going on here? Where's the business going? Where am I going as an individual? And I think that's where you make those CEO level decisions and you start to really, push the business and chart the business in the way that you ultimately wanted to go.
Yes. You stay in that like hamster
Yeah.
wheel instead of a vehicle moving forward. Like you're moving and you're probably moving a lot and burning a lot of
Yeah.
calories, but you're literally going nowhere. As opposed to if you're in a plane or on a car and you're moving towards the next destination, which could be a plethora of things depending on who you are and what you value as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, do you feel like that's something that happens because people know and they just don't do better? Or do you feel like people aren't just aware that they are doing that, there's this kind of narrative or maybe, a conversation around, the more that you're doing, the more productive you are, the more revenue you should bring in. But do you feel like that's something that, needs to get out there a lot more overall?
I do think that's something I will say
Yeah.
millennials. We grew up watching, like, that's how we were
Yeah.
raised. You go to work, the more you work, the more you earn
Yeah.
type thing. And so we dove into entrepreneurship. We wanted to make our own money, but we carried that unrealistic expectation. If I work 100 hours this week on my business, I'm guaranteed to make XYZ amount of money. And that's not the case because we're probably doing the easy tasks or the tasks that feel important but aren't genuinely going to move the needle forward. And we have to step back and view, how am I going to, how can I make money better?
Yeah.
Like, is it gonna be, and it could be anything, like, all of these marketing strategies work or these people wouldn't be making money, but you have to find the strategy and the time management tool and mindset that works for you. I am now married and have, between my husband and I, we have 5 kids.
Mm,
So what works for me is not gonna work for someone that only has 1 kid or no
yeah.
kids or is single. So they had the capacity to go to networking events out of the house day in and day out and like really connect one on one. I don't have that. So I have to rely on podcasts where I can speak to the masses, but from the comfort of my house or my co working space. I have to rely on my content connecting in the best way possible. So all of my time, energy, and effort goes into my blog posts and my podcast. So then I break those down into the 5,000 different ways that I can do that. And I put it on Pinterest and then I do put it on social media. I don't not use social media. It's just not my primary focus.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing. It's so funny. Like I think years ago, and we might have even chatted around this on the on our podcast as well too, where there's a book by Damon John called The Power of Broke, and broke is kind of like a symbolic of the constraints basically. And there's this idea like if you want something done, give it to a busy person because a busy person is going to find the most efficient way and effective way to kind of get those things done. In the same ways, when you don't have all the time in the world, whether you do or you don't, you want to be effective and efficient with the time that you have. So if you have one kid, zero kids, 10,000 kids, you want to make sure that you're maximizing your time. And I think that's such a powerful thing that you said, and something that we kind of have to remind ourselves of is like, how can we maximize our time, not do all the things, but do the things that only we can do that are going to move the needle forward in the way that we need them to do. And the more we spend time there, the more we become the quote unquote CEOs, I think.
Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, Dana, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get out of you, find about your podcast, all the awesome things that you're working on.
Absolutely. So one thing, I guess the last additional thing is I want to share and make sure everyone here is one thing that I'm passionate about is helping business owners realize that sustainability is a growth strategy. The next generation of buyers, especially Gen Z, rewards clarity, transparency, and accessibility. Businesses that understand that now will have a serious, significant advantage moving forward in their marketing and in their sales and in their revenue. So the best place to connect with me is through my podcast, The Unapologetic Pinner, where I share practical strategies for sustainable visibility and growth. I don't flub as much, but I probably do. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram at danas.desk.nc, where I actively teach and demonstrate how search-based visibility works in real time. All of my podcast episodes are 10 minutes or less, unless I have a guest. So they are designed to be bite-sized. You can immediately take action to set your future self up for success and discoverability.
Absolutely. Well, I truly appreciate that, Dana. Of course, to make everything easier, we'll have the links and information in the show notes. I do flub as much, so you can get used to that as well too. So you're definitely home there. But in the grand scheme of things, I think I love that last point you kind of left us with. I think so many times and maybe it's a millennial thing. Maybe we see like hours equates to revenue, hours equates to success. The amount of time you put into something is how successful you're going to be. But when we start to think differently about things, then we can start to see different results. And I think when we start to realize that sustainability is a business model, it is an option, it is the thing that we need to do for ourselves, but also for the business that we're growing, but also for the future of our kids and, all those things, we start to look at things differently. So I appreciate you so much in sounding that message and doing all the work that you do, because it allows us to think about business differently. And then we can start to see different results as well too. So Dana, appreciate your time, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you.